Yes, it is. This is a pre-recorded show as of today, Wednesday, the 29th of September, 2021. Just bear with me, initiates. I shall await Brother Claudio joining, and we shall begin. Hello and welcome back. You'll see now on screen, I am joined by Brother Claudio. He's our guest, honoured participant, initiate for today's special and much needed presentation of the 29th of September 21. We're here today to discuss and go through the rites, the R-I-G-H-T, R-I-T-E-S. What are the rights to retain, reserve, employ, recognise? You would think at this point in 2021 that rights would be obvious, that we are taught from a very young age what our rights are, who we are, what we are, when we are. And, we would think that this is a given, that this is something which is not needed to be talked about, not needed to be examined. But unfortunately, especially of the last 24 months, we will find that we're not sure about rights. We have governments, and their proclaimed sovereignty of Parliament. We have the divine right of the kingships. Are rights inherent? Are they divine? Are they gifts from government? Are they liberties? Liberties can be, afforded to sailors and other such when they come ashore, but liberties can be taken away from you. They're not affixed as such. We have unalienable or unalienable creator-given rights, as I said, inherent, or are they only for kingships and divinely bestowed upon? Depending upon your position within our societies today, you may find that some seem to have more preferential treatment with regards to recognition of their rights if they are, we'll say, claiming a title such as Lord, Sir, His Majesty, Her Majesty, in the elite club, in any kind of club. We have institutions and establishments, companies, corporations have rights, people have rights, legal persons have rights, animals have rights. I'd argue that Mother Nature, Gaia, the animal kingdom has rights, mankind has rights, humans have rights, peoples have rights, authors, artists, intangible intellectual property rights, copyright rights. So I've already set the stage in a nutshell why we are here. What are the rights to retain, reserve? Why and how are they recognised? How do you enforce those rights, retainment and reservation of them? We're going to be focusing today with regards to a different area that we haven't so much examined in detail previously. We've started with legal. The Templar London Law Society have got some commercial maxims of law, and one of those maxims you'll find reads, if I may paraphrase, and don't quote me, to the letter on this, but those that do not assert their rights at law are viewed to have none. So when I said earlier that you would think it would be a given and that they are fundamental and they are unalienable, and they are attached to you, well, no, because in a legal, commercial, public, civil, or even to some extent criminal realm, you will find that if you do not retain your rights and you do not know what your rights are, you are viewed most often by these societies and establishments to have none. So if you're not taught about them and you're not sure what they are, how would one go about retaining them? Now we look at the Abrahamic faiths, we look at Islamists, we look at Christianity, we look at Judaism, we look at the Japanese Shintos, the Buddhist sutras, the Indian Vedas, and the Hindus and so forth. We look at all faiths, all religions, pre-Christian, going back to the form of civilization, we'll say, at the point of maybe 16,000 BC, and we shall work forwards, and we find ourselves in a muddle You know, we're not giving legal advice today. Let that be noted. We're just speaking offline. This is a recording, and it will be premiered very soon, hopefully with myself and Claudio present. So we're going to chat informally, and we're going to look at, aside from equitable title rights, legal title rights, you know, the law area that we've covered, the Abrahamic biblical areas that we've covered. For some, that will be enough, and this video will be perhaps disregarded as non-essential and irrelevant. But hopefully, we will prove to you that it is relevant, depending upon what you present yourself as, how you present, public, private, your status, standing, and capacity. Okay, and for the purposes of clarity and the avoidances of doubt, both I and Claudio are speaking our mother's tongue, plain and simple English. Okay, and there's no legal advice here. We're having an informal chat that's hopefully for the benefit of a great many, and we're going to examine and cross-reference rights, the rights to retain and reserve, because it seems that some believe that they have a higher entitlement or a more preferential reason to regard those rights. Corporations' rights, you know, corporations claiming property, land, title rights, and certain things like that. Legal persons' rights, corporations' rights, mankind's rights, and how we go about employing them. There is a list that we can move down with regards to retainment and reservation of rights and recognition of rights. And unfortunately, as of the 29th of September 2021, most of our family, tribes, initiates are not sure about their rights and how to assert their rights. And so that's a very big problem, especially if you're facing a legal encounter, claims, environment, and you are needing to, in their society, prove and retain rights and enforce those rights. They're not going to do it for you. A solicitor will not do it for you. An attorney at law will not do it for you. They're in a club called the Legal Law Society, and they may look after their own rights, their own interests, self-interested interests, and they're not obligated and obliged, you know, to show you these rights. You would need to double check and to retain them yourself. So the stage is set, and I'm going to hand it over to Claudio to say hello, and we'll see where we end up, my good brother. Thank you very much.
Thanks, brother. Awesome. Great intro. Happy to be here. Always a pleasure to speak with my brother from the same mother. It's all beautiful, man. You caught me. It's hard not to bring in the metaphysical side. As soon as you said the rights of a sailor when he comes to sea, and this is the boat of Ra, and this is the sea. So we have rights, but society took them away from us by our own choice, by the way. But because we gave them up, then in walks some people who think they can have more than you and me and everybody. So society right now, most of them really don't care that we want our rights because they're happy. They don't care. But for some people that are feeling that their rights are being removed, and that whether it be karmic or not, it doesn't feel right, so to speak. So it's going to be an interesting conversation, because we know that we have limited rights, and those rights have been agreed upon by our foremothers and forefathers, but in an illusionary way, without knowing that they're giving up their rights. But as a society, if you want to come over here, then these are our rules. It's happening now. People are starting to form little communities, and there's no constitution in these communities, and it's just whoever's got the most money, whoever owns the land, makes the rules. So in essence, they're creating a constitution is whatever I say. We form these societies, or the past formed the societies, the bankers form these societies, and everybody comes there and follows these rules. You find out the rules are not good. We've overcome them over time. We've developed the international covenants to overcome the tyranny. And yet, because of lack of communication, they've always seemed to bring back. And because the people that want to bring in the international covenants, those are the terrorists, right? The terrorists to this democratic system that is a society that removes your rights. Because let's face it, most people don't want to change. They want businesses, they want profit, they want to continue to make as much profit as they possibly can, and they don't care about the next guy. So we're living in that society. So there's a whole bunch of brainwashed people that don't understand this because they think it's all okay, because they have, but the have-nots out there are the ones that are not wanting to have. So yeah, it's going to be an awesome, interesting discussion. Our rights, we have them, they're there, like you said, but you got to go display that you want your rights back. But now we're going to talk to people who don't get it. And we got to tell them, well, here it is, here it is, here it is, here it is. And they're going to go, what does that mean? So until we get the brothers and sisters who are now waking up in the legal to get them over to the lawful side, and with the knowledge and wisdom of all the step process that you have, brother, I mean, I don't know anybody that has that like you have, which is very instrumental in showing a court of law what the past has brought forward in the tyranny that was in play. By design or not, from spirit, don't know, but well, I do know that it's a very interesting topic.
Yeah, thank you for that. And yes, we've put a tremendous amount of work into this. A great many of us. It's not. I may be the face and one of the representatives. The man here on screen with you today, but there is a great many minds and souls behind me, as there is you, and what you're presenting and what I'm presenting. We're merely conduits for the, message, the age of mess that we're in. We may be sages of the ages with an important message for the age of mess. And we remember that the Creator, we'll say God, loosely termed, created man. Man creates government. Government created persons. And legally, the confusion starts to stem from here. Rights would be classed at law as property. And so we have a little bit of a technical hurdle to climb, only like Hadrian's Wall to step over for some, but to others it's quite massive, where rights would be classified as property at law. So abuse of rights would be, or ignorance of rights would be ignorance and abuse of property. And abuse of property can be construed as acts of terrorism or even war type, acts of war. So this is a very serious and somewhat from the outset complex situation and issue to go through. But for us, we'll try to make it simple. And as I've explained, there are different types of rights for different, entities, we'll say. And we are spirits, souls, consciousness housed in a body, a sleeve, a vessel. We are not considered to be anything other than in the image of, I and my Father are one. Have I not said to you that ye are all gods? And these types of, these Christian mystic teachings of Jesus have been taken from the Bible and the first 5 books of the Torah in the ancient Hebraic and phonetic text, but they existed before this canonization, and they have been influenced and taken from places such as Confucius, China, and Middle Eastern areas, Persia. There's a lot of history here, but we've covered quite a lot of that before, and we understand the depth of where we're at in the seas of the holy seas, the seas of commerce, the seas of space. Yeah, indeed, I like your little touch there with Ra and the boat and the seas. And I'd like just to touch upon then, and to start with the creation of the human rights. And if we could try to go in a chronological order with regards to warfare, conventions, treaties, covenants. God made a covenant with man, and there are reasons why we are attracted to certain words when we find them, and case law that is attached to that has set precedents or landmark cases and case law, for us to use. And if it's already been done once and we can find the relevant aspect to quote, then there's no need to go through the battle and the journey, because if we educate ourselves in the right areas, it will save us a lot of time, energy and from being, attacked and losing the battle. So warfare, warship, it's a spiritual encumbrance, it's a legal encumbrance, it's a lawful encumbrance, but ultimately we have a sacred contract with one another, to each other, and information, knowledge is power. And those that cannot recognize their rights and retain their rights will be viewed as having no rights. So for some, you may find parts of this interesting and the rest you might want to disregard. For others, you may actually be delighted to find that there is a simple, effective, concise pathway to retainment and reservation of rights. They haven't been taken away from you and they belong to you. You are given them as a default at the point of the female ejaculation and coming into this realm as mum gives life to you by us being born. The principles of equity, first in time is first in line. So we can teach you how we lay out the argumentation for these aspects of rights and how we would move through that and how we would layer that and discover that. So without further ado, I'd like us to look at the reasons why we mentioned it as an international Magna Carta. We've just to close off before I hand over to you. We was looking at others in the common law, Freeman, Magna Carta, constitutional movement that have got certain methodologies in ways of retainments of rights and what area they're in, what paradigm, what stream of law they consider themselves to be subject or not subject to, and how they retain rights and hold others to account. So we have somewhat of a universal declaration of rights for us to consider with regards to the topics that we're going to talk about today. So I believe in the late 1940s, there was a universal declaration with regards to this. And as I close down now, we need to recognize that there are 5 permanent member nation states on the United Nations Security Council. And as they are on there as the 5 permanent member nation states, and they have ratified treaties, covenants, and agreements to this, they cannot ignore these covenants and rights, and failure to do so, we will discover, is futile to them because they are duty bound. Some might say they're non-binding agreements, but overall conventions and treaties agreed to by, I think it's America, England, China, Russia, and France. Don't quote me on that. I believe 4 out of 5 might be right. Claudio, I'm going to hand over to you and say, let's go, brother.
All right. Well, I'm not sure why you're saying 5, because every country has signed and or ratified or given ascension. Every country.
It's regards to the 5 nations. Sorry, it's regard to the 5 permanent member nation states on the United Nations Security Council. If you do a search and you research that, there are 5 permanent.
On the council.
That's it. That's what
I'm saying. I get what you're saying, but that is another masquerade.
Okay.
Because every country has signed, ratified, or ascended in their laws to make sure that the international covenants are covered. I've done many constitutions and they're all in there. So of course they're going to put that there, and those are going to be the brothers and sisters who make these documents aren't aware of their own treaties that are the most important that are sitting there. So whether those 5 are in there, I know they're in there, but so are the other ones. Whether they sit on a council means something, but it means nothing more to me than that they're just 5 of every country that are on there. So that being said, one of the I go by the Supreme Court rulings, and after Canada redid theirs and made sure that after they signed, and Canada was very instrumental as many other countries were, but in writing the UDHR, there was a Canadian there. So that means Canada was very much involved and had a lot of pressure on these tyrants. And Supreme Court of Canada in 1980, Supreme Court of Canada, 1981, Zingare versus the Queen and et al. Supreme Court of Canada. It is a recognized principle of international customary law that a state, corporation, aka country, may not invoke the provisions of its internal law, legalese, as justification for its failure to perform its international obligations. That one sentence is so powerful and holds in any Supreme Court around the world, because the Supreme Courts are outside of the corporations. They give the illusion that the Supreme Courts work for them. No, they were just on every land to ensure. But without communications, they buried all this. So I like going with what's there, recent, that shows. The reason why they don't want people to know this is because it has a signature. And signature means karma. Because somebody in their heart said, I promise. So it's got huge karmic value, hence why every time every country signed, go look it up and go look in the media on what happened in that country around the time of signature. They created so much media hype so you wouldn't know what was really going on. In every country, it lines up like clockwork. Why? Because it's a karmic document. Don't let the people know, because it will go through. It's a gate. It's an opening. It holds spirit. It's dielectric. It's love, because it holds the human rights, our rights.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for that. There's a lot there to take in, and that was a very powerful citation that you've just made there, and it's very relevant with regards to rules, policy. You can't use corporations, officers, etc. Can't use, even ministers. The ministerial code cannot use their corporate rules and policy to break law. That's what I'm interpreting from that. And there are also accords. I want to also mention alongside this, I've done studies with the Abrahamic Accords and what was signed on the White House there. So if others make a note, and we're not going to talk about that now, but there are other things such as the accords. An accord, look what an accord is. You have chords, strings, bows, accordions, notes, music, but chords of music, yeah, but the accordion, Giuseppe with his accordion on the street there. The Abrahamic Accords are also relevant to mention on this topic. And I've also just been to have a look at the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, also known as the Permanent Five, Big Five, or P5, are the 5 sovereign states to whom the UN Charter of 1945 grants a permanent seat on the UN Security Council. It's China, France, Russia, United Kingdom, and United States. The permanent members these permanent members were all allies in World War II and the victors of that war, and are also all states with nuclear weapons. Though, oh my goodness, wait, I've got notifications blocking my screen. Wait there. Not all 5 had developed nuclear weapons prior to the formation of the United Nations, the remaining 10 members of the Council are elected by the General Assembly, giving a total of 15 UN member states. All 5 permanent members have the power of veto, which enables any one of them to prevent the adoption of any substantive draft Council resolution, regardless of its level of international support. There we go. There's a bit of background on that little issue there.
That's just the council, but that can be misinterpreted as there's only 5 people that have those international obligations. So they're a council. That just means they're a council. But the documents have already been signed, that there are documents that have been signed by every one of them that you cannot change it. They cannot change the documents that have been created.
No.
Everybody signed those documents.
Yeah, there is more than 5. Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I agree with it. There's 5 that are on a permanent council, just a council. It's a board of directors. It's a breakout meeting. It's whatever. It's to some people that's an illusionary in their mind that it's those 5 guys and they run the whole thing. No, they don't. The document that was signed by every country is what was made by our foremothers and forefathers with love. But they gave you both choices, to be in society and associated with the corporation or not. That's what's in there. It's in the, I don't have them off the top of my head as far as what number in the ICCPR, but it says you have the right to be recognized as a person before the law. It's right there. You have the right to be recognized as a person. So right to be recognized as a person means I want to be in society, recognized as a person, which is a corporation, and follow your rules, because I don't like going with Giuseppe over there because he raises turkeys and they wake me up in the morning. And I want to live amongst the concrete jungle and eat your poisonous food, and I don't care. And I want to steal from my next door neighbor because that's allowed, because it's written in there that the bankers can do it, so I can do it. So that's the difference. People wanted to be in society with these tyrants because they were stealing lunch money, and other people didn't. So they left it there for both. They had to. So now it's up to you. Now, the majority of the populace thinks that this one here is all there is, but it's not. There's both there, both choices. So it gets back to metaphysical. Materialism, spiritualism. This one's crumbling. It's fall of Babylon. It's crumbling. We're not going to get too much into that. And this one's coming forward because it's love. So your rights as a spirit in this land is coming forward.
Yeah, that's a good point to note there. That's relevant, and I'm not going to argue with that. There are you have the right to be. It's the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article number 6, that you've referenced there, with regards to all humans are afforded the right to be recognised as a person in front of the law. So that means that we can respectfully and politely decline the right to be recognised as a person, and then therefore that only leaves man, human, to be recognized, which then separates the instrumentation from ourselves. We don't take the Father's name in vain, and we can remain honorable, free from sin, so to speak. And we would be not recognized as a person because we've politely, respectfully declined the right. So therefore, legal liabilities, public duties, liabilities with respect to legal interface are now dealt with differently, and that you cannot discriminate against I for being man, or nobody can be discriminated. Equalities and certain attributes of this is that the free man and the Constitution, Magna Carta movement have difficulty explaining that they are man and not a person to say a judge or to an officer. So how do you articulately, concisely, intelligently communicate to the legal London secular Roman society that because we use the word dead person, dead entity, dead fiction, I'm not dead, and we didn't put ourselves across quite so articulately as what we could, and we didn't give them unequivocal, irrefutable reasons of which to recognise that we don't want to claim the title, the name, the legal liabilities, and we want to stand aside from that. We want to be a party. We want to be presenting. We are not the defendant, and we want to present in a spiritual, wholesome, lawful, intellectual, recognisable way. So that number there of number 6 article would be a more realistic way, logical way, tactful way of saying, wait, I'm not a free man. I'm not so much of a sovereign. I'm not needing mental assistance or help. You will find my honour if you check. Here, it is written that we are afforded the right. So those that do not retain their rights at law are viewed as having none. So they may well know and be privy to the fact that you're on about the articles and covenants in these various declarations, treaties and accords. But unless you can reference that, you will be labelled as a mentally unstable, free man, sovereign, radical, maverick of some sorts. And even they're not obliged to tell you. They want to win this battle. And so therefore, that is a very concise and articulate point to put out straight away, that we have found, other than the biblical references and the covenants that are in the New Testament, the Old Testament, and the teachings, the mystic teachings of Jesus and other such religions, we have found a very concise and articulate way to point out that we are man present with a person, not person that has an occasional man at the discretion of the establishment. We are pointing out and referencing amongst other instruments and paperworks that we have within this instrumentation that is internationally recognizable, which is part of our, what do we call it now? We call it a universal non-sectarian remedy for all. So that's kind of in the areas of which we would be most grateful to receive that information, because it can help a lot of people and not instantly, and it's irrefutable. I'll yield there.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So I'm just going to further go. Slate Communications Inc. versus Davidson in 1989. It follows that, this is from the Supreme Court. It follows that any body exercising statutory authority, for example, or the governor and council, or lieutenant governor and council, ministers, officials, municipalities, school boards, university, administrative tribunals, and police officers, is also bound by the charter. Neither body can authorize action which would be in breach of the charter. So the charter implies to the section of the Constitution that was added after those documents were signed, the international covenants. Thus, the limitations on statutory authority, which are imposed by the charter, were flowed down the chain of statutory authority and applies to regulations, bylaws, orders, decisions, and all their actions. On top of that, Thomson Newspaper Limited versus Canada in 1990. While individuals as a rule have full legal capacity by operation of law alone, artificial persons, which is a person, in Canada, a person is that one we just talked about, unless they take it out, which they do, are creatures of the state and enjoy civil rights and powers upon only the approval of statutory authorities. And there you go again. So society, we're going to tell you what your rights are because you want to live with us. The next paragraph in that same Thomson Newspaper Limited versus Canada, the individual may constitutional rights. He owes no duty to the state. It's a corporation, since he receives nothing there from beyond the protection of his life and property, because it's in law that they must. If we choose not to, they still have obligations. His rights are such as existed by the law of the land, long antecedent to the organization of the state. So before they were even formed, and can only be taken from him by due process of law. In other words, and in accordance with the Constitution. In other words, you can't do things that, harm assets or lives. He owes, excuse me, he owes nothing to the public so long as he does not trespass upon their rights. So these are living documents that are at your disposal for anyone to use. These have a signature from a Supreme Court judge, which holds karma. And right now, with instant karma upon us, if you are in the right, you aren't a good person, and everything should be going your way, that judge now has to listen to this because there's big karma upon it. And they will feel the love of spirit if they don't follow this. Again, if your intentions are good, you will have this power, this gateway, this funnel, this vortex that was created for you if you're a good person. If you're looking to make millions of dollars and you're a great big materialistic person, you probably won't succeed. You probably won't. But these are there for that, so we can gain our rights that have to line up with spirituality too, though. So it's funny how, as we're going into the fall of Babylon, all the biblical meanings that are happening to us, that this is coming out, because we got to get ready for doing the right thing for the right people and setting up the right structures so we can live in harmony together. Because we can't use the constitutions and we can't use the laws, the legals, that there's only 41 pages in international covenants, to which 60% apply to corporations, which we won't need anymore. So you only really need to learn about 15 pages, right?
It's not too many. Not too many at all then.
The rest is all about keeping the people from doing this. They're living in disharmony because of lack of love and a desire for materialistic and profit. That's why they're all there. Everybody's giving each other karma.
We need to go from discord to an accord accordingly, right. Harmoniously.
Like an accordion.
I'm sorry I mentioned that earlier. I shouldn't have said that. But
you should. It's okay. I used to play the accordion.
I didn't know, but let me just share a screen. This may help as well, just briefly. Let me screen share where I'm at. And I'm in the domain, and I'm on in a forum, International Universal Declaration of Human Rights and Fundamental Unalienable Rights. And you will see as I scroll down, if this is working, the various topics that I've created across the annals of history. And I've selected this forum here. Let me just scroll up. And there's quite a lot of depth to it. It's entitled the UDHR. It starts off with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I have some, extensive information. We have some extensive information. I can just scroll down because I'm not going to read all of this out. But this is where the articles that we've talked about, there's an interesting bit at the beginning that I'll pause there for you to take screenshots, or you can pause the video on informations about that information, various information that's applicable. The articles are here. You can find these yourself. They do exist freely and for anybody to see. That was the Article 6 that was particularly interesting, that everybody has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law. It doesn't say human. It's very cleverly worded. It's like a leading question. So if that be said, everyone has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law, then everybody, that's not mandatory and it's not verbatim. Everybody can have the right and decline respectfully and politely the recognition everywhere as a person before the law. So where does that leave us? That leaves us as not a person, as not a legal entity. Corporations can be persons, persons can be corporations. So then you are human, and therefore it's very cunning how they've worded some of this. But I want to scroll down to the next chapter, definitions of the right to recognition of a person before the law. And I've got some further information there. And I'm going to. It's
important that if you scroll back up, it's important to mention the ICCPR there.
Oh, by all means, yeah, please do.
That you have in there.
You can go on. I'll let you.
We lock up.
Oh, where did I go? So I don't know how you kept up with that. I'm scrolling quite fast. I was heading to a different point.
Okay.
Wait there. Oh, it's my screen. I've just maximized the screen now. So preamble. Let me scroll down. Articles. Where did you see that? The IC. Hang on. Control and F. You said ICCPR. Is that right?
Yes. It might have been spelled out.
ICC. Let me just find my word search. No, that doesn't work for some reason. So after the articles, let me see where we was at. The next post, I believe, when I went to the second.
Yeah, International Covenant of Civil.
Oh my goodness!
Right there.
It's jumping. Wait. Yeah, I'll go back to it. I know where I'm going now. I'm sorry about this. Got glitching.
That's right. And it's choppy on my end. There you go.
International Covenant on Civil and Political. When you abbreviate that, we're looking at International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. There we go. Sorry.
And then also there is the International Covenant on Social, Economic, and Cultural Rights, ICESCR. Both of those are extremely important because the UDHR started it, and then those next two covenants are spin-offs of it. And everyone signed the ICCPR. They're responsible for all of them, but I found that document where they've signed the ICCPR.
Yeah, I've got the right to recognition as a person before the law is enshrined in Article 6 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The right is enshrined in Article 6 of the ICCPR. Everyone shall have the right to recognition as a person before the law. And then we've got furthermore detailed, information there. The right is also contained in Article 5 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. So there you have the word human, for you to have a look at there. The Convention of Rights with Persons with Disabilities contains. So this is just letting you know.
Yeah, so in Article 16 of the ICCPR, it holds the exact same one. Everyone has the right to recognition ever as a person before the law. Article 8.2, no one, it's important, that's human, no one shall be held in servitude.
Yes.
the pure fact that they are not allowing you to bring out your rights, that's servitude. So Article 8.2 in the ICCPR is very important as well. Because if you are Mr. Judge, Mrs. Judge, telling me that, then you are now karmically attached to holding me in servitude.
Slavery. For those that have not heard the word servitude, aka slavery. Voluntary slavery is not illegal. That's the key pin here, hinge pin here. But forced slavery is actually outlawed and illegal and unlawful. But if you submit an application form for a job and you willingly submit that and sign it with full public liabilities and don't retain and reserve any rights, you have, like a wrestler, you've tapped out, you've submitted. Mitts go on the hands, don't they? Mitten, I believe it might be Germanic, German, of etymological root references. So a submit is a kind of a below punch, a below hand, below, submarine, submersive, submissive. So submit, leave that there, but you submit a application for a job. So you're kind of begging to be employed by an employee, and a ploy of Troy. You can go back through this later and we can elaborate on it, but to stay on thread. So you then beg for employment. So you have submitted in some way, knowingly or unknowingly, it doesn't matter. These are the guidelines and precepts, axioms of legal, public, civil, commercial interface. We'll call it commercial intercourse and voluntary prostitution, where you use your body to make money. For use, by doing a job, you moving your body, you're getting paid for that. Payment, you get credits. We'll not stick on the words here, but you get what I'm saying. So you are using your body to make money. You are soliciting yourself, solicitors, soliciting, sexual soliciting, commercial intercourse. So the linguistics and the styles of which I've come privy to over the years from other teachers and thought leaders. These aren't my own works, but I'm able to cognitively help you out with the inner standing and overstanding with the previous understanding that we've had, and how we are viewed then technically, linguistically, legally, and commercially to have been, legally volunteering through our own volition to beg for a job, which then puts you in a lower ranking status, unbeknownst to us all, including myself, until just a few years ago when I had this information. I was like, so forced slavery is illegal and unlawful and is banished and outlawed as of the 1800s thereabouts. And what they've cunningly done since then is tricked us by way of our own voluntary actions, volunteering, submitting, and we've unwittingly been hoodwinked, and these are the loops and circuits that they use to make this clean and above board. Just because it's legal doesn't mean it's lawful. It can be legal but highly unlawful. Legal slavery, is afoot. We call it surety to the debt. This is how in bankruptcy, nation states and establishments and empires have continued to run. So as the abolishment of slavery has apparently, allegedly, publicly been announced, then a different form of slavery has occurred, which is unspiritual, ungodly, unholy. We've deserted our rightful positions by way of needing to earn promises, credits, money, etc. It's not money, it's just promises, Federal Reserve banknotes, private issued, but we're not, stick on that. And the empire wants to borrow money from the bankers, but the bankers know the empire has no gold. And so therefore they want assurances that for the private reserve, federal, Bank of England, etc., central banks, we'll call them, are lending money. There is no intrinsic value behind them. And this is the area of which all of that, what I've just said, the employment and the ploy of Troy, voluntary, submitting, slavery, legal, lawful. It may be legal, but it can be unlawful once we point out certain areas of that. So I'm going to yield there, brother.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Your knowledge is extensive, and I know I meant to say it at the beginning, that the team of people that you guys, that group that you guys have is amazing, and you have brilliant minds working together. It's so awesome. I just want to keep going with Thomson Newspaper Limited versus Canada, and this is to do with everyone has the right to life, liberty. Now remember the word everyone, and this is important because he talks about the word everyone, in case somebody's thinking, well, couldn't everyone mean corporation too? But it's very well defined. So the right to life, liberty, and security of the person. So we'll get into that in a minute, because security of the person opens up a big can of worms. So it says, that is read as a whole. This is Article 7 of the Constitution Act of Canada. It appears to us that Section 7 was intended to confer protection on a singularly human level. A plain common sense reading of the phrase, everyone has the right life, liberty, security of the person, serves to underline the human element involved. Only human beings can enjoy these rights. There you go. Everyone, this is by the Supreme Court judge, everyone, in quotations, then must be read in the light of the rest of the section and defined to exclude corporations and other artificial entities incapable of enjoying life, liberty, or security of the person, and include only human beings. So everyone means human beings. So it's defined that way in many places, but it's also in law. It's in case law, which has been signed and holds karmic value. So I can just keep going and going and going, but I'll stop there. But the security of the person, security, and you can probably nail this one 10 ways sideways, but security means several things. You're thinking security of me, that's one, but security of the person, that's the corporation and its securities, right? So we have the right to that security and to security. So
yeah, well said, brother. Well said. Thank you for that. I would like just to continue on before we move on to the next possible subject or segue. It's regarding the topic we're on now. All human beings are born free. Redirects here. It is not to be confused with all men are created equal. Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Eleanor Roosevelt, holding the English language version of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The human rights adopted by the United Nations General Assembly of its 183rd meeting held in Paris on the 10th of December 1948. We've got some information there that I'm going to skip past that you'll be able to see on the screens. And I'm going to go to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. UDHR is an international document adopted by the United Nations General Assembly that enshrines the rights and freedoms of all human beings. It was accepted by the General Assembly as Resolution 217 during its third session, 10th of December 1948, at the Palais de Chaliot in Paris, France. Of the 58 members of the United Nations at the time, 48 voted in favor, none against, 8 abstained, and 2 did not vote. A foundation text in the history of human and civil rights, the Declaration consists of 30 articles detailing an individual's basic rights and fundamental freedoms. Individual, that's an interesting word for me, and affirming their universal character as inherent, inalienable or inalienable. I like to use unalienable or unalienable. I'm not happy with in, but and applicable to all human beings. So we're going to skip through there. All 193 member states of the United Nations have ratified at least one of the 9 binding treaties influenced by the declaration, with the vast majority ratifying 4 or more. While there is a wide consensus, declaration itself is non-binding and not part of customary international law. There is a consensus that many of its provisions are binding and have passed into customary international law. Although courts in some nations have been more restrictive on its legal effect, nevertheless, the UDHR has influenced legal, political, and social developments on both the global and national levels, with its significance partly evidenced by its 524 translations, the most of any document in history. And on the screen, you'll see the contents of where I've got this from. I've sourced this just searching, and I would need to look at the actual prime source for this, the UDHR, and from the United Nations, and the actual documents themselves. A declaration consists of the following. Articles 1 to 2 establish the basic concepts of dignity, liberty, and equality. 3 to 5 establish other individual rights, such as the right to life and the prohibition of slavery and torture. 6 to 11, the fundamental legality of human rights, with specific remedies cited for their defence when violated. 12 to 17 set forth the rights of individual towards the community, including freedom of movement and residence within each state, the right of property, and the right to nationality. 18 to 21 sanction the so-called constitutional liberties and spiritual, public, and political freedoms, such as freedom of thought, opinion, expression, religion, and conscience. Word, peaceful association of the individual and receiving and imparting information and ideals through any media. 22 to 27 sanction an individual's economic, social, and cultural rights, including healthcare. It upholds an expansive right to a standard of living. 28 to 30 establish the means of exercising these rights, the areas in which the rights of the individual cannot be applied, the duty of the individual to society, and the prohibition of the use of rights in contravention to the purposes of the United Nations. There's history and background there, going into Franklin Delano Roosevelt, 6th of January 1941, State of the Union Address, including the theme of the 4 freedoms. What else have I got that was relevant that I wanted?
Can we hold that?
Yeah, where to?
Can we hold on that one for a second?
Yeah, by all means. Yeah.
Just while you're there. So the tyrants were scrambling at that time when these documents were being made, because they were being exposed. So in 1944, Roosevelt declared in 1944 about certain protections when they are most weak and vulnerable. So they started saying the elderly deserve economic, so they started making things up. In addition, who can't work or illness or access. So they started giving all these political promises. So in case something shows up on your doorstep, they're going to say, no. The tyrants, they got it. They're taking care of us, right? So I've got a whole list of all the different things that the tyrants did to cover up the fact that the UDHR and then the ICCPR and ICECR were being thrown out. So I just wanted to show that yes, when you see the words like Roosevelt and all these politicians, they were putting out placebo things to your, so that was why you'd just stay in society and you wouldn't realize the rights you have. Because then they started making bills of rights and all kinds of different documents that would still keep your rights away from you. So if you're going to talk Bill of Rights and all these other rights that they made, that they enacted, then it really is doing you a disservice, because you always have to go by the law that's breaching your fundamental rights, where it's at in the Constitution that's breaching your right, that leads to the international covenants. That's the step process the judge will want to see. Where are they limiting and bridging your rights? And I yield, brother.
No, it's very relevant, yes, and I thank you for that. This is why we're here. This is why I need you to sound back. I said the conversation to take a certain flow. We're doing this informally, but we need to enhance some of the areas there. And when I'm dropping these names, and that's exactly why I'm going through and skimming these paragraphs. Where am I now? State of the Union, Four Freedoms. When I mentioned Franklin, then during World War II, the Allies, formerly known as the United Nations, adopted their basic war aims: the four freedoms: freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of fear, and freedom from want. Towards the end of the war, the UN Charter was debated, drafted, and ratified to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights and dignity and worth of the human person. Well, that's an oxymoron in itself, but we'll carry on. And commit all member states to promote universal respect for and observance of human rights and fundamental freedoms. Creation and drafting. In June 1946, the Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC, a principal organ of the organ, they're inside us. They're also that accordion I mentioned, and they're here as an organ, an organization, a principal organ of the newly founded United Nations, responsible for promoting human rights, created the Commission on Human Rights, CHR, a standing body within the UN tasked with preparing what was initially conceived as an international Bill of Rights. It had 18 members from various national, religious and political backgrounds so as to be representative of humanity. In Feb 1947, the Commission established a special Universal Declaration of Human Rights Drafting Committee chaired by Eleanor Roosevelt of the United States to write articles of the Declaration. The committee met in 2 sessions over the course of 2 years. The document is based on the English Magna Carta, the 1689 English Bill of Rights, the American Declaration of Independence, the American Bill of Rights, and the French Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. Well,
that's important. That's
pardon?
important.
Go on, comment, please. Man. Off you go.
Yeah, the right of man. Okay, this one was man last time I talked, the human, and the rights of the person. They have them both there. So the reason why they're in those meetings is not to make sure they're protecting your rights. They're protecting their interests. Soon as they start going into the bill of all those things there, all these committees and everything else, they're already starting to take you away by introducing these Bill of Rights, Bill of Rights, Bill of Rights. Why are they making a bill? The law's already been created. The supreme laws in the international covenants. When they're creating a bill, it's a diversion to the law. That's their legal version. So you got to be careful when you're looking at different bills and all that. You have the ammunition in the international covenants. What Brother Jeremiah is saying there, the UDHR, ICCPR, ICSCR, and there's a couple more, you're done. You're done. The rest is all made by them to create confusion and a litany of a whole bunch of things that will cause you to go all kinds of ways and need to study days and days and nights and nights and years and years and years. So what Dave and the whole group is doing is beautiful. He's showing you an easy way.
Well, thank you, brother. It's it's very important and critical that we go through this. I would like to mention that we have various biblical references. Some of the Bible scholars will be shouting now, God be no respecter of persons as well. So an important point to know alongside all of this as we're drafting and paralleling against other topics that we've covered. The Christians, the true Christians, not these false Christians that try to attempt to judge us with reference to their God, that God being money, moon eye, and the moonisters, the ministers, alongside this other subject that we could go into. It's so easy to splinter off and lose track here, but it's no respecter of persons. So to some people, this is why we tie in with religious, social, political accords and so forth. There is the person involved there, and in the scriptures it tells you that that God be no respecter of person. And if we are all created in the image of, and I and the Father are one. And if JC in his teachings in Psalms and John and chapters and verses there points out, have I not said unto ye that ye are all gods? Think about this. Let's go a little bit. If we can be comparative and we are taught in these chapters and verses that we are sons and daughters of, we are a son and a daughter of God, and God is no respecter of persons, then we should have no respect for persons. Ka-ching. Yes, no, maybe, perhaps. Penny drop moment, not for Claudio, but for the scribes and the scholars and the ones that are looking for enlightenment, that have perhaps studied the bibliothèque for a long time and now are thinking, you know, there's no answers in this. It's all just too deep and too many layers and open to interpretation. But there is a codified key there and a message that we can find within this as well, that we can draw, which is why we don't just use one area of law and why we actually need to extrapolate different parts of different things and then get together as a family. And we don't have all the answers. We're not telling you what to do, but there is messages and there are ways out, because if there wasn't a way out of slavery or forced voluntary, especially mandatory slavery, if there's no other option and you're forced to be a person, then that would be also an act of war, which is a direct contravention of what we're reading about here. There has to be an escape route, a stage exit to the left. Life of Brian, crucifixion. Yes, crucifixion. When they're in the queue and they're carrying the cross, crucifixion. Yes, crucifixion. And after the fifth ask, he goes, crucifixion. And the bloke goes, no, actually, freedom. And the man replies, oh, that's this way. Freedom's this way. And then he replies, only joking, crucifixion. And off they go again, you know, to burden the cross and go to. So you can read into this in a great many ways. And there are teachings and things there. When we look at the legal London Law Society that has ensconced itself across many continents and areas of the realm there, adopted from, then you know, we recognise that the legal law London Templar, Knights Templar laws are based upon the Bible. If you look at the 10 commercial maxims and biblical precepts of that society and its fundamental 10 maxims, you will find biblical precepts next to them. Why? You know, again, there's the way out. There is the key and the pathway to salvation and to honor. We mentioned the English Magna Carta. We've got 2 publications that I've distributed for free entitled A Proclamation of Sovereignty Explained, Parts 1, version 5, I believe, and Part 2, version 1. And I point out in there that the papacy, the Romanus Pontifex, annulled the Magna Carta 1215, and the subsequent revised editions by the kings coming forward after King John that then tried to reinstate various Magna Cartas. So we have to take some of this that I'm reading with a pinch of salt, and that there is a fair amount of supposition in here, and it is needing further citation and referencing when we've said that the document is based on the English Magna Carta bills and rights and American declarations and so forth. American Declaration of Independence, I'll even ballpark that. For there to be a war, there has to be an announcement of war. And after a war, there has to be a treaty of peace. And so when we look at the Americas and the US Inc. and USA and all of this, and the historical timelines and the annals of history, we see that there was a war and an independence there, but there was no peace treaty afterwards. So I would argue, just due to what I've said here, that there wasn't actually a validated official war between the you know, it happened. I'm not doubting that. But what I'm saying is, officially and formally, where is the peace treaty then? Where is the certain preambles to it? And then the documents that follow after it, if it is a recognizable, valid thing. So it's not just England and the UK and the kings and the monarchies. It's also over there that there are inconsistencies and suppositions within history itself. So, interesting food for thought for those that are in this area and that have got the you know, the know-how to tangibly articulate the paradigms of which we find ourselves in. Claudio, you want to echo anything before I move on?
No, keep going, good.
Adoption. The Universal Declaration was adopted by the General Assembly as a UN resolution on 10th December 1948, as I've said. Of the 58 UN members at the time, 48 voted in favour, none against, 8 abstained. Honduras and Yemen failed to vote. So I've covered that. The British delegation, while voting in favour of the declaration, expressed frustration that the proposed document had moral obligations but lacked legal force. It would not be until 1976 that the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights came into force, giving a legal status to most of the declaration. It says voting in the plenary session. Green countries voted in favour. Orange countries abstained. Black countries failed to abstain or vote. Grey countries were not part of the UN at time of voting. The 48 countries that voted in favour of the declaration are Afghanistan, Argentina, Australia, Belgium, Bolivia, Brazil, Burma, Canada, Chile, China, Colombia, Costa Rica, Cuba, Denmark, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Egypt, El Salvador, Ethiopia, France, Greece, Guatemala, Haiti, Iceland, India, Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, Liberia, Luxembourg, Mexico, Netherlands, New Zealand, Nicaragua, Norway, Pakistan, Panama, Paraguay, Peru, Philippines, Siam, Sweden, Syria, Turkey, United Kingdom, United States, Uruguay, Venezuela. We have a little map there of what I've just read out that I've linked from the site that I've took this from. Despite the central role played by the Canadian John Peters Humphrey, the Canadian government at first abstained from voting on the declaration's draft, but later voted on favour of the final draft in the General Assembly. 8 countries abstained: Czechoslovakia, Poland, Saudi Arabia, Soviet Union, Belarusian, Ukraine, South Africa, Yugoslavia, and the 2 countries that didn't vote, Honduras and Yemen.
So that's you're showing like 50, right?
Roughly, yeah, about that, yeah.
That was back in 1946. The ICPR grabbed the rest of them. There's something like 200 and something of them that are signed, ratified, or ascended on the United Nations website. I just went back and tried to count them real quick by how many are on a page. I've got it in posts. I got it in posts on how many there are. Every country was grabbed. So that's just, you are right. At that time in 1948,
yeah.
But it was in the 60s that they expanded outward to the rest of the world because they had to find all the tyrants. Okay. And saying, hey guys, we're all going down if we don't create this 2-tiered system. There you go, materialism and spiritualism, to which this one is now going to fall. But they've grabbed them all, and that's in the on the UN, treaties.un.org.
Yeah, this page is very deep, and I'm just reading. I've done the posts in order, and since origination and formulation and moving from, and then we need to obviously, as you say, compare into now time into 2021. So it's 70 odd years have passed, and there's been a lot of history in between that we need to recognise, and the wars and certain things that have happened subsequently, and the what would we say? The establishment, the British Empire, foreign territories, independence themselves, nations declaring independence, and the empire itself kind of crumbling in some ways and losing its grip on the foreign territories because they've now claimed independence from, and then the establishment has had a loss of earnings, as you can imagine, a revenue, and so they've had to find other ways to supplement what they would have been taking before. The countries that have been mentioned have then obviously got independence within themselves and separated from the grips of the empire, colonies and such things as, yes.
Let me explain how powerful this document is, the ICCPR, which is part of the UDHR. In May 21st, 2018, that's only 3 years ago, Qatar signed. They have to. Don't take this document lightly. It holds a lot of karma and power to you if you're good. So if something else were to come around, why are they still doing this? Because this was the document, and they've been hiding it. They're not just signing up for UN to be nice. No. Your human rights are in there. It's very powerful.
Indeed it is, and it's contrary to perhaps some agendas that we're aware of, Agenda 21, Agenda 30. These are contrary to such other things that are running parallel simultaneously, with which we will perhaps need to talk about in another video an issue, but let it be said, both Claudio and I are aware of certain other agendas that are going off at present, and this is not the time nor the place. We need to start at the beginning, and if it needs to be 3 or so many videos going forward where we can, interface and look at these and show, that these aren't necessarily uniting nations as such. They may actually be ununiting nations, and there may be tierages of agendas within them. But we are here today to talk about a certain, area and rights, and what is there and what is tangible and what is factual. And then we can look at the other, because I need to mention this now as well, because I know that's, relevant and prevalent to some others, to some of the scribes and viewers that may be disregarding this with regards to, if there's a bit of a double-edged sword here, as with everything. So don't think that we're not aware and we don't recognize this at the same time, and that can be found. I've searched for agenda and done some research on agendas, and I'm aware of even birth control that we call contraception. And that's, as I say, for it to be debated, perhaps live, once this video and content has been digested. Perhaps we'll have a non-recorded chat and we'll have a live chat and go into that at a later date. And, don't think that we're not aware. There's a map here that shows the Muslim population in each nation worldwide. And it says that, see also Cairo Declaration of Human Rights in Islam. Most Muslim majority countries that were then members of the UN signed the declaration in 48, including Afghanistan, Egypt, Iraq, Iran, Syria, Turkey, which had overwhelmingly Muslim population, but officially secular government. They voted in favor. Saudi Arabia was the sole abstainer on the declaration among Muslim nations, claiming that it violated law, the Sharia. Sharia means law, I believe. I believe Sharia law is like saying law. It violated Sharia. Pakistan officially and Islamic Republic signed a declaration and critiqued the Saudi position, strongly arguing in favor of including freedom of religion. So there's quite a lot of information that is relevant, and it's to do with the belief. Because you'd argue that, okay, if human rights, David and Claudio, are that universal and that fundamental, why is it in some Eastern countries women have no rights? They are not allowed the same rights as men, and that's true of today. And they have their rights are lesser. They are not equal in society. So if it's a bit of a, I'll mention it now because it is relevant, and we can talk about that at a later point. Again, that's something which is at the back of my mind that I'll bring forward. We don't need to focus on that intentively now, but that is something that I will put on the table, that they are, not unilaterally overlaid and given as, that's why we use the word, they've used the word non-binding in some respects. So when we've said that and we're talking about this, don't think that I haven't already planned and prepared for, and, you anything you want to say, Claudio, by all means. So we've got a lot there on the Middle Eastern areas. I'm going to scroll through. I want to.
It's mind-boggling that they centered out the Muslims. It's like, but that's okay. Yeah.
Well, we've got some interesting. There's a lot there. This will take hours and hours if I was to read through it intentively.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we could talk for hours on any paragraph.
So we're going to let's let that and screen share that and let others go and find that themselves, and look at the Middle East. Not that it isn't important, and it's not that we're focusing on white Anglo-Saxon. We're not at all, but we can come back and do this at another time. We have an agenda to fill, I suppose, and we are including all families, all races, religions, sects, creeds, countries, continents, and we are mentioning this because it is relevant. And I'm going to mention something about Islam and Muslim in a minute, and I'm going to give that time. So do not think in any way that we are prioritizing one over another. It's too in depth, and we're in the West, I believe, and so this is more relevant for those that are in the West, and most of us will have adopted to that, and you are obviously able to have different non-Christian beliefs and faiths, and we call it a universal non-sectarian remedy for all, and we mean that, and we will bring that to you in due time. So the agenda for today is a couple of hours. We don't want to go through the saturation point, and we will look at Asia and the Middle East in another video. So as I go down, I want to talk about the 1998 before we go as well, human rights, because that's got some interesting parts of it as well that have been mentioned across recent times to do with current offers for the pandemic, and they've been particularly the right to private life, the right to various things there that we can talk about that are going to help people. So yeah, this is interesting. Let me go back up to the top. So all men are created equal, part of a series on humanism. Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, circa 1490. And then we go through rights, theoretical distinctions, claim rights and liberty rights, individual and group rights, natural rights and legal rights, negative and positive rights, human rights, civil and political, economic, social and cultural, 3 generations, rights by beneficiary. There's lots there. I'm not going to read all of that out. The quotation, all men are created equal, is part of the sentence in the US Declaration of Independence, which Thomas Jefferson penned in 1776 during the beginning of the American Revolution. That reads, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." End quote. The phrase was present in Jefferson's original draft of the Declaration. It was thereafter quoted and incorporated into speeches by a wide array of substantial figures in American political and social life in the US. The final form of the phrase was stylized by Benjamin Franklin. It has been called an immortal declaration and perhaps the single phrase of the American Revolutionary period with the greatest continuing importance. And for those that don't know what the Vitruvian Man of Da Vinci is, there it is. The square, the circle, symbology in itself. Yes. We can go down at the age of 33, number symbology there. Jefferson may have also borrowed the expression from an Italian friend born in Prato and neighbor Philip Mazzei, as noted by Joint Resolution 175 on the 103rd Congress, as well as by John F. Kennedy in A Nation of Immigrants. So Thomas Jefferson, through his friendship with Marcus de Lafayette, was heavily influenced by French philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment, such as Voltaire, Rousseau, and Montesquieu. In their often censored writings, those philosophers, forgive my pronunciation, those philosophers advocated that men were born free and equal. This later led to the French Revolution of 1789 and the concepts of human rights, droits de l'homme in France. French, droits, unidroits, droits del homme in France. So that's then, it says 33, Jefferson may have borrowed that from an Italian friend. Interesting, hey?
Yeah, I just see it as all sidestepping, fake news, making the people hear what they want to hear. So when you're at a bar having a drink and somebody mentions human rights, you won't engage because you think the politicians have it. So the politicians tell you what you want to hear, so you don't engage in conversation because you think, no, they've got your back. So all the politicians of the past, to which everybody thinks were good, they were paid for, and they just wanted to give you the illusion that your back is covered. But what they wanted to do is keep you in the society portion of it and not go after your freedoms. Why didn't they say UDHR? Why didn't they say ICCPR? Why didn't they say ICESCR? Because they wanted to create a different version, one that keeps you removed with rights removed. Bills of rights. Canada's got a Bill of Rights. That removes your rights.
Yeah.
Every country's Bill of Rights and Constitution removes your rights, but they have to have in there because so you can stay in society. but they have to have in there your escape to your fundamental human rights and freedoms, to the international covenants. They're all listed in there. I've stopped going through constitutions because they're all done the same thing. They say that you have your rights, and then in the next paragraph, they remove them and call you a person, a civilian, or whatever. So that's in every constitution. They remove your rights. So you stay in their society. And they call it a free society, a freedom to do whatever you want as long as you're within their legal laws. Right.
Yeah.
But you know you don't need any of these laws because everything is by karma. Everything that happens to us is karmic. Do you need all those laws? Nope. You don't. You don't. Everything that happens to you is in your chart. So anyway, those politicians were really good at just letting you hear what you wanted to hear.
The very well put there. The 14th Amendment in the Constitution says that all persons are attached to the national debt, so there's the co-trustee and co-beneficiary. So you bang on. I can quote something there where they've called them persons, the people.
Oh, they're smoking Cubans and drinking cognacs.
We the people.
They got their karma coming. Nobody's exempt. Nobody's exempt. They're scrambling right now. They are. They really. I pray for them. I do.
And history shows us that the founding fathers were not, and England's tied in with this. Columbus and Cook and the Empire, the Commonwealth, and etc. So I'm not just pointing this out and having a go at the other side across the pond. But to be honest, let's face it, the founding fathers were not honourable. They were mostly white, drunken, arrogant, racist men. That's a fact. It's proven. It's not being horrible. It's not being, prejudicing against. When you look at it and you look at the history and you look at the facts, they were not honourable men as such at all. So this gives you an idea of why we are very cautious with what we use and how we use it and why we use it and when we use it. And there is a time and a place. And not all of it is applicable or relevant, and most of it would be governable to the employees of the state, for those that are in wards of the state that are not sovereign, that can't claim sovereignty. Sovereignty mentioned in the Bible over 220 times. There is lots of references and chapters and verses that are more powerful than the actual bills. The codified Constitution of America and the non-codified Constitution, which forms the bills, acts, and statutes and legislation coming out of Westminster and the City of London here on the landmass England, or the new Republic of the new Sovereign Republic of Britain. So we've got a lot to look at, and it's not as clear cut. With regards to that, because the contradiction between the claim that all men are created equal and the existence of American slavery, including Thomas Jefferson himself owning slaves, attracted comment, when the Declaration of Independence was published. Congress making few alterations to some of the wording, have deleted nearly a fourth of the draft, including a passage criticizing the slave trade. So let's look at the rights of man, and we've got to include the darker skinned family and how they had lesser rights. Women had lesser rights. Women were to love, honor, and obey. Women had to fight for their rights. So through history and through the evolution of time, we can see that it was mostly white men that had rights recognized first, then the darker skinned family and the women alongside that. And both the latter are still fighting in the police investigations into the police force over here in England. They have been found time and time again, fact of the matter, and I can get proof if you need it, to be institutionally racist. You've only got to look at Stephen Lawrence's mum's claims and things like that. To be institutionally racist and to have flaws within them time and time again. There's an officer going through the Old Bailey right now that's kidnapped and raped a lady and been caught for it. So they are not. It's not a foolproof system. It's not something we can trust in. It's not something which is it's tried and tested. We've got a lot of issues and a lot of areas that still haven't been ironed out even to this day today. And these institutions that are around us, they are a lot to be desired, and they haven't got clean hands. And the history shows us that, and independent reports and reviews and claims and cases and litigation. And, I'll stop there, so that needs to be said as well.
If I could just jump in there, and you just went by a line too that just happened to grab me. It's funny, is that they keep talking about all men are created equal, but then women, right? Well, we're going to talk about this in our 333 meeting today. The word Lord means mother, the female. The word Lord does not mean man. The word Lord is a misinterpretation all the way back for the woman. The woman is the master, Ma star. She's the mother luminary. Think about the Black Widow. The Black Widow eats its mate, kills its mate after they mate. There's a reason for that. She's not killing him because she's done with him. She's killing him for what he has done. There's a reason why there is a hourglass shape on her back, because the hourglass is the inside of the Taurus field, which is spirit. Just the Black Widow alone, because she's black, which means spirit. The hourglass means spirit. And when she destroys somebody for being materialism, right then and there. So the woman is the Lord. So when you see the word Lord, they're talking about Isis, Madonna, Mictacawada, the winged woman, the Ma star. So if you want to talk about submission.
No, yes and no. Yeah, well.
No, I didn't mean now. I'm just saying, in your own mind, if you want to submit to somebody, okay, I'll leave it. I'll yield now.
Yeah, we got to look at the European courts, the European Convention of Human Rights. We always got to like Strasbourg and Vienna to talk about there, to include as well. I'm looking for the 1998 human rights as I'm scrolling through. There is another little bit I want to read about the Middle East. As I mentioned, there's far too much for us to read. I've got this in a forum and we can expand on this later on. But is there any more, while I'm looking, is there any more areas, covenants, treaties, accords that you think are relevant to mention, please?
It's amazing you stopped right there. Certain specific rights apply in criminal cases. So the word person, which means corporation, you can't throw a artificial person in jail. In Canada, which is going to be the same way in every constitution, they redefine the word person to mean human so that they can throw your ass in jail for crimes that are against like the 10 Commandments, 42 spiritual laws of Isis, that kind of thing. So they do redefine the word person when it's to the advantage and needs to happen to a human. Two places they do it. One is in the criminal code, and the other one is in the banking acts, because when you find out that you've been limited abridged and you need to get paid, they have to redefine it again to human, because a human came and made a claim. So they redefine the word person twice.
Wow. God, yeah, it is. I've included this in some documents, and this is our literature, is sourced from various and many places, and it's not word for word exact, but there is a lot of articulation in here, case law, citations, references. It's just massive. I've dumped it all, and it's for cross-referencing, consideration, and food for thought. Main articles, ECHR, Article 9, freedom of conscience, freedom of thought, freedom of religion in the United Kingdom. Article 9 states that everyone has the right to freedom of conscience, including religion and belief. So that's interesting to know there, to quote. So when anybody is to question if your status, standing and capacity, that's an interesting area to focus on. Only the manifestation of a belief can be limited on justifiable legal grounds as strictly necessary in democracy. We've got such things as common law, trespass.
If you're going to use the ECHR, make sure you follow the path that leads and ends in in the ICCPR, ICSCR, because the ECHR was created as another diversion to try to make another path go. It was in that video we did a long time ago, brother. So just be cautious when you use it. Make sure you use it only as a stepping stone.
Go on.
International covenants, step as many times as you need to. Get to the Constitution in your country. England doesn't have one, by the way. And then to the law enactment statute code regulation that is removing your rights established in the supreme law in the international covenants. That step process is important because you got to show the judge where they've limited or abridged your fundamental human rights, which enactment that they're placing on you that holds you in servitude. It's important to go that way.
What year was, thank you, yeah, very important. What year was the ECHR, do you know? Or?
Yeah, I'll quickly look it up, brother. I wish I could hold it in memory, but.
I've got it here, but I've missed that. I'm trying to find an article within these articles.
1953, it was done between the UDHR and the ICCPR and ICSCR. So see, they tried to put something in between to start pulling the people towards them. That's why then they make Bill of Rights. They make all kinds of different documents to keep you in your society, person, corporation, artificial rights that are limited. Right. Those were all moves so that you wouldn't find out. And because there was no internet back then, they won. But they got major karma coming to them.
Yes, they have.
I was born in 61, so I could have been one of them and coming back, but I have to now fix what we've done. That's why I pray for them, because we were them. In the last 2,000 years, we did stuff that we weren't supposed to. So you can only have love for everybody because it was their turn to experience what they're experiencing. But their karma is going to be, if they know they're doing it knowingly with all this now, yeah, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good. So.
Yeah, agreed. We'll follow that. And I echo that. An interesting point of history too, just because I'm only nearly halfway through this, and we won't dwell too much more on this. I'm going to go to the 1998 after this. And but by contrast, the common law historically required punishment for erroneous opinions concerning rites or modes of worship to be provided for in legislation before it could be applied. There were a number of such laws in the 17th and 18th centuries, including the Corporation Act 1661, requiring holders of civic office to be members of the Church of England, and the Test Act of 1673, requiring holders of military or civil functions to take the oaths of supremacy and allegiance to subscribe to a declaration against transubstantiation. Both acts were repealed by the Roman Catholic Relief Act in 1829, which admitted Catholics into the legal profession and permitted Catholic schools and places of worship. Jews were allowed to enter Parliament under the Jews Relief Act of 1858. The succession to the Crown Act.
For a second, brother. I just need to jump in because when you look at the translations of the Bible in 1611, the King James Bible, originally with all 80 books, the Apocrypha was officially removed in 1885. Look at those dates.
Yeah.
1858, 1885. They're removing your spiritual rights too, because these are people who are just, they don't get it. They just lost their way. That's all. They lost their way.
Contrived.
Because it's all sequential. It's all there. The law, the Bible, all going this way. And now it's coming back. No choice.
Yeah, before the 1611, you've got to consider and look at the Geneva Bible, which is what was allegedly in place before the KJV authorized version came into play, and the involvement of Shakespeare and so forth. The 1599 Geneva Bible, and have a look around that and do some research on that, initiates and everybody that was in play. With Claudio saying that, there's a reason why that was removed and the other one was put into play. You've also got Guy Fawkes around that time, Henry VIII, King John, Guy Fawkes, oh Lord, Richard the Lionheart. I could splinter off and go through, but I'm not going to. But you're relevant. He's bang on. I agree with what you've said there. And there is, when we look back on it now, we can see, or what seems to be premeditated plan and an agenda at hand. Yes, it wasn't by chance or accident. And the Succession to the Crown Act 2013 amended the Act of Settlement 1701 to remove the exclusion from the line of succession of those who married Catholics. However, it remains the case that the sovereign must be a member of the Church of England. Unlike the Church of Scotland and Church in Wales, the Church of England is the established church in England and enjoys certain privileges and rights in law. However, the promotion of anti-Christian views is no longer illegal, and the law places no formal restrictions on the freedom of worship. There is no formal legal definition of religion, and courts generally abstain from deciding issues of religious doctrine. The common law offences of blasphemy and blasphemous libel were abolished by the Criminal Justice and Immigration Act 2008. A new offence of indictment to religious hatred was created by the Radical and Religious Hatred Act 2006. And then I'm going to go through to the next part, what I'm looking for, which is, I'll try my Control and F again. This should hopefully work now. I think it's my screen share, my overlay. Let me just stop sharing screen a minute. Because this does work, and it's an important, interesting area regarding the Middle East that I'd like us to concentrate on, or to just focus on a moment.
While you're looking,
yeah,
the Middle East, all their spiritual dates, alignments with the stars, which align with Phoenix Rising, the female that's coming back. That's why they wanted them out. That's why they centered them out, because they're holding on to the true calendar. They're holding on to the true Bible. They're holding on to many true things. Of course, there's some people that lose their way and do things to women. Of course, they're going to put that in the media so that you start to hate, start to dislike them. But there's a lot of fake news that they use too, because there's a lot of Muslims out there most of the Muslims are beautiful people that got a really good heart. We've all lost our way, every one of us, but we all hold a little piece so that we can remember who we are. So.
Yeah, Islamists and Muslim, I self-law am master Islam, and trust technology, equity and trust, or effectively trust, kind of originated, and I've got proofs of this by a professor that teaches this. That I'm not willing to give the information away now, because there are many that take what we do and usurp us. But I can prove through my discovery that trusts didn't originate England as such, and perhaps were in effect a long time way before they become used and knowledgeable by the knights and those of us, in the West. They were Eastern originated. I'm going to leave that there and just go back to this Middle Eastern section. It may take me a few minutes, but it's not so long, and I think you'll find it informative. Historians generally agree that Muhammad preached, or when we say that, we can say peace be upon him. I'll say that once, and then, I've done that respectfully, that Muhammad preached against what he saw as the social evils of his day, and that Islamic social reforms in areas such as social security, family structure, slavery, and the rights of women and ethnic minorities were intended to improve on what was present in existing Arab society at the time. For example, according to Bernard Lewis, Islam from the first denounced aristocratic privilege, rejected hierarchy, and adopted a formula of the career open to the talents. John Esposito sees Muhammad as a reformer who condemned practices of the pagan Arabs, such as female infanticide, much too small, infanticide, exploitation of the poor, usury, murder, false contracts, and theft. Bernard Lewis believes that the egalitarian nature of Islam represented a very considerable advance on the practice of both the Greco-Roman and the ancient Persian world. Muhammad also incorporated Arabic and Mosaic laws and customs of the time into his divine relations. The Constitution of Medina, also known as the Charter of Medina, was drafted by Muhammad in 622. It constituted a formal agreement between Muhammad and all of the significant tribes and families of Yathrib, later known as Medina, including Muslims, Jews, and pagans. The document was drawn up with the explicit concern of bringing to an end the bitter intertribal fighting between the clans of the Aus, AWS, and Khazraj within Medina. To this effect, it instituted a number of rights and responsibilities for the Muslim, Jewish, and pagan communities of Medina, bringing them within the fold of one community, the Ummah. If the prisoners were in the custody of a person, then the responsibility was on the individual. Lewis states that Islam brought two major changes to ancient slavery, which were to have far-reaching consequences. One of these was the presumption of freedom, the other the ban on the enslavement of free persons except in strictly defined circumstances. Lewis continues, the position of the Arabian slave was enormously improved. The Arabian slave was now no longer merely a chattel, but was also a human being with a certain religious and hence a social status and with certain quasi-legal rights. Esposito states that reforms in women's rights affected marriage, divorce, and inheritance. Women were not accorded with such legal status in other cultures, including the West, until centuries later. The Oxford Dictionary of Islam states that the general improvement on the status of Arab women included prohibition of the female infanticide and recognizing women's full personhood. The dowry, previously regarded as a bride price paid to the father, became a nuptial gift retained by the wife as part of her personal property. Under Islamic law, marriage was no longer viewed as a status, but rather as a contract in which the woman's consent was imperative. Women were given inheritance rights in patriarchal society that had previously restricted inheritance to male relatives. Anne-Marie Schimmel states that compared to the pre-Islamic position of women, Islamic legislation meant an enormous progress. The women had the right, at least according to the letter of the law, to administer the wealth she had brought into the family or has earned by her own work. William Montgomery Watt states that Muhammad, in the historical context of his time, can be seen as a figure who testified on behalf of women's rights and improved things considerably. Watt explains at the time Islam began, the conditions of women were terrible. They had no right to own property, were supposed to be the property of the man, and if the man died, everything went to his sons. Muhammad, however, by instituting rights of property, ownership, inheritance, education, and divorce, gave women certain basic safeguards. Haddad and Esposito state that Muhammad granted women rights and privileges in the sphere of family life, marriage, education, and economic endeavors, rights that help improve women's status in society. However, other writers have argued that women before Islam were more liberated, drawing most often on first marriage of Muhammad and that of Muhammad's parents, but also on other points such as worship of female idols at Mecca. Sociologist Robert Billar, beyond belief, argues that Islam, in its 7th century origins, was for its time and place remarkably modern in the high degree of commitment, involvement, and participation expected from the rank and file members of the community. This is because he argues that Islam emphasized the equality of all Muslims, where leadership positions were open to all. Derek Eichmann writes that Billar suggests the early Islamic community placed a particular value on individuals as opposed to a collective or group responsibility. Early Islamic law principles concerning military conduct and the treatment of prisoners of war under early caliphate are considered precursors to international humanitarian law. The many requirements on how prisoners of war should be treated included, for example, providing shelter, food, and clothing, respecting their culture, and preventing any acts of execution, rape, or revenge. Some of these principles were not codified in Western international law until modern times. Islamic law under the early caliphate institutionalized humanitarian limitations on military conduct, including attempts to limit the severity of war, guidelines for ceasing hostilities, distinguishing between civilians and combatants, preventing unnecessary destruction, and caring for the sick and wounded. I yield there. That's just, I never knew. I'm not saying that that's right or that that's exact fact, but people say, oh, Islam, David, Muhammad, this, that, the other, he was dodgy, he was wrong, he did X, Y, and Z. I don't know. I wasn't there. We only know what we find and what is written in the annals of history. So this is just food for thought. And when I said earlier, we're not focusing on just the Western, and we will go back to the East. That's my homage to Islam, Muslims, Islamists, and the Middle East. And much like the trust technology, where I found possibly could have most likely originated from the Middle East, I pay respect for that if that is in fact true. I yield there, brother.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. Look at, there's a whole bunch of continents where confused people got together and tried to start communities. And it's just, to me, it's just a cycle of the Piscean age where we lose our way, and we got what we got, but now it's all coming together. Beautiful people that you hang with. It's you're helping so many to realize what's transpired, and at the end of the day, we just all want our rights, but we all want to show love. We got to be loving. We got to be loving while every one of us is waking up, or I like to say jumping into the wake. You'll do far better in court if you got love in your heart. So yeah, I haven't studied at all the law as far as legalities for the East. But I mean, I know all constitutions are written in the same way, and those bankers, they're in every country. So the documents got to be similar. But what you're finding is obviously unique.
Just paying particular attention when I do searches and when I'm looking on domains and when I'm looking around. I'm responsible, and as the governor, I govern myself accordingly. And I look at many areas where others will disregard it, and we have consensus. Consensus is, as you've pointed out in the last video, it's a very dangerous affair, and we need to look at issues with regards to these areas, like the areas such as the paradigms of occultism, of Blavatsky, of Lovecraft, of Hall, and of others that I look, and I'm not afraid to go in and dip my toe in and have a look and immerse myself for various reasons, and I can accept many things. I don't need necessarily believe them, and I'm willing to swim against the current like a salmon, and I'm prepared to take a hit, and I'm prepared to, as others are in our family and in our movement, so it's a delight. Sometimes you get surprised by what you find, and what we actually think we know is not actually what is. It's a preconception. It's a fallacy, and it's not always true. Those that write history are the victors of the wars, and they write it in their favor, do they not? So there is many suppositions, and there is many areas of which we believe, we think we know, but we don't actually know the truth. It's not the truth, it's his story. And so some aspects we're wrong, and what we think we know is not what it is, and I'm happy to be corrected, and that's how we live and learn and grow, by our errors and mistakes. But the fundamental principle of it all is respect, is given at all times, and trust is earned, and we love and respect and trust one another, and we operate in this way, and we'll get a lot further with that, won't we? With that thesis, rather, that there's more that links us and joins us than there is that divides us. So it's looking at this and going through. I'm not a scholar of any type, I'm self-taught initiate and on my way to ascension and attainment of higher knowledge, then you have to look at and these areas which to some are a no-go and are bad and dark and will just end up tainting defilement of the mind. But the Buddhist teachings and the Tibetan Buddhism and other such areas teach, and that's how I look at things. And I'm happy to talk openly and to take criticism, to be amended. A lie told once is a lie. A lie told 100,000 times on popular media networks and retweeted and etc. quickly becomes truth, doesn't it? So that's where we need to, pause a moment and check out what we think we know.
Yeah.
I'm looking in the COVID and Corona forum now for UNESCO bioethics and the 1998 human rights, Claudio. Just let it be known, and then we can look at closing down and calling it a day if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been going for 2 hours, so people's earbuds are going to be bothering them by now, and if they made it this long. I got a challenge that I gave myself, and that was to create a constitution. I created a constitution based on abundance, though, and sustaining abundance. So in other words, in a community where there is no money. So I'd like to extend that challenge to anybody. You can go and read the one that we've created on our permaculture self-sustaining community Facebook page. But it's if you can make a constitution where you think most of the people will be happy, and if you agree with the one, you don't have to agree with it, but if you look at that one and see that this was made so that you wouldn't have that separate society, one where people want to take from others. It's not an easy constitution to make. So, but if you can see how the populace went towards this way, because I don't want to go make my own constitution. I don't want to learn anything. I just want to be a part of somebody, and I'll just do what I got to do every day. And that's a beautiful thing. Well, you can write a constitution that takes care of all those people too. Do what you love. But the thing is you're not going to have to work 30, 40 years and have to work. You can do it because you love it. It's a different story. But to say this is all we have for you and you must work and you're in slavery and servitude. So there's a fine line between both those systems. And that's the fine line between spirituality and materialism. That's that duality that it doesn't really exist because we are one. How do you create a constitution that covers both? So I challenge anybody out there to go and do that, because it's not easy. And that's what we're upon right now, because we're upon a whole bunch of brothers and sisters that just want to be managed.
Governed, yeah. They want to be governed.
But they've been overmanaged and stolen from. Right? So I challenge you, for those out there that have that in them. I lie in bed awake at night and think about what changes would I make to that constitution? How would we all live in harmony? With abundance, though. Because most people will end up with a system that we're under right now that removes your rights. Think about that one.
I will take some links from you, and then once the video is uploaded and ready to be premiered, by the time this is actually premiering, then the links will be underneath the video in the video description. So whatever you'd like to share with me to then put into the description, Claudio, for those that want to find out more, look at this, read about it, take up the challenge, pick up the gauntlet, if that's excited a few, then that will be whatever you give me. I will put in a video description and share like I did last time. I'll add those already existing links and any extra links you've got, and I will put in as well. All right. Sounds interesting.
Sounds awesome. Yeah, it's challenging, right? That's what they had to do.
Boycott this fiat madness, this ancient technology that's no good to us, that's worthless, that's served its purpose, and it needs the technology needs to evolve, and we need to stop interacting and using full stop to some extent in many areas. So that's beautiful to hear and to look at. Yeah, self-governing, self-sustaining, somewhat self-interested, and self-reliant, self-repairing, self-healing, self-medicating, etc. So that's all part of what we would look at as sovereignty in itself. The authentic and sovereign initiate womb man is crowned as mother gives life to us as she performs this female ejaculation of giving life and borning man. The doctors, the midwives will say what? They will say baby is crowning. So when you're looking at rites and you're wanting to look at extremities of, aside from what we've talked at today, let me go a little bit, biblical, if I may, and point out we all wear the crown, and we wear the crown because we happen to be crowned. Unless you're born backwards, and then I suppose it's on your bottom rather than the head. Baby's crowning, but it's come out bottom or feet first. But generally, mostly, you see, just leave it out. All right, it happens the head first, mostly, normally, and baby is crowned. And if you come out bottom first, you've been crowned on your bottom. You're still wearing a crown. Just don't sit down too hard. Then the sovereignty, power, and greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven will be handed over to the saints, the people of the Most High. His kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and all rulers will worship and obey him. Daniel chapter and verse 7:27. Matthew 5:9. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Isaiah 9:6. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Psalm 82, verse 6. I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. John 10, verse 34. Jesus answered them, is it not written in your law? I said, ye are gods. Genesis 1, verse 27. So God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. He created them. So what does the Bible in Genesis 1, verse 27 and Psalm 82, verse 6 mean by ye are all gods, David? Why does God call you a god? You are gods because God created you in his image. That means that you have the attributes of God. You are gods because you are God's son or daughter, sons and daughters, because you are the representation of God on earth, because you are heir apparent to heaven, because you are a crown prince to God, God's spiritual son, a replica of God in human form, a model for God. Ye are gods because when people see you, they should see God in you. It means you are God's lookalike, a reflection of God, a mirror of God. God is in you. You are God's ambassador, a reflection, an image. What does that imply? It means that you have power, authority. You are not ordinary. You are possibly considered supernatural. And as the Lord said unto Moses, see, I have made thee a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron, thy brother, shall be thy prophet. Who is your Pharaoh? Because Claudio touched on Amun-Ra, and it's a favorite area of mine as well. Egyptians and Moses and Ramesses, and oh wow, it's just too massive and deep for now. But who is your Pharaoh? There are physical and spiritual pharaohs. Your Pharaoh is anybody or anything oppressing you, anything or anybody enslaving you, anything or anybody reinforcing bondages in your life. Bonds, stocks and bonds, financial bonds. Your Pharaoh is anybody that is happy when you are suffering. Pharaoh is anything that does not want you to go. Pharaoh is any power that is resisting your deliverance, is any power that is consulting darkness to oppress you. Your Pharaoh are enemies of your breakthrough. Pharaohs are powers oppressing you in the house, school, or work. Pharaohs are powers pursuing your life for evil. Spiritual pharaohs are demon spirits and human agents in form of witches and wizards. Why does the Bible describe you as God to Pharaoh? Your physical and spiritual pharaohs must bow before you. Your afflictions must bow before you. Your Pharaoh shall eventually be disgraced. You have the power to silence your pharaohs. You are stronger than your Pharaoh. Your pursuers shall perish in the Red Sea. You can command your problems to disappear. You can command your problems to fade away. You are above your challenges, initiates and fam. You can waste wasters. You can manifest the power of God. You are a God to demons. You are a God to spirit husbands. You are a God to spirit wives, to evil spirits, to evil angels. You are a God to witches and wizards. You are a God to herbalists, false prophets, stargazers, and enchanters. Prayers. The God in me manifest in Jesus' name. Physical pharaohs bow before me in Jesus' name. Spiritual pharaohs bow before me in Jesus' name. Psalm 8:5. You made him a little lower than the angels. You crowned him with glory and honor. Zechariah 12:8. On that day, the Lord will defend the people of Jerusalem so that the weakest among them will be like David, and the house of David will be like God, like the angel of the Lord going before them. There's a treasury of scripture. I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. So I've got lots here. I could continue on, but I'm just going to leave that and just end with there's a lot to look at that we do look at, and how we can have these and employ these rights, titles within these realms that we find ourselves in. And we don't just use one area, we use a great many. And as I've tried with Claudio today, and it's been brilliant, and I'm so glad you've given the time as a special superstar sovereign guest. We look and respect to all languages, faiths, religions, houses, covenants. We're all one set of lost tribes that are finding our true house and joining back up. And we've gone across a great many areas, and we have a certain order of which we can layer this out for you, and we can enforce these rights. So anything you want to say on that, Claudio, to echo?
No, I know that by the time people watch this, the meeting that I talked about for today is going to be gone, but we got to get you there one of these days, because you have a lot of Bible influences. So we're going to be doing a few verses today and giving the metaphysical meaning behind them. And everything you say, it's once you start seeing the misinterpretations, it's very easy then to read between the lines after 30 odd slightly misinterpretations of the other, since the Dendera Zodiac, or the scriptures, I like to call them the scriptures that were put in concrete a couple thousand years ago plus. They all have beautiful meaning, and it's about you. It's about you. I'm looking at the camera now. It's about you being the chosen one, you being the Horus hours on the clock. That means your journey is all those different characters, persona around the hours, the Horus in this boat of Ra. So everything that you speak and say is beautiful. It's you have a lot of knowledge and wisdom, brother, and I'm appreciative of this meeting as well. So it's been almost 2.5 hours, and just wanted to say I love you and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to learn from you and to share what I've learned from others. I really appreciate it. Much love and respect.
Oh, bless her. Thank you, brother. And you're welcome to get off and, what's the word? Excuse yourself at any moment you may feel to. We are going to close down, but I did promise that I would look at 2 more aspects of human rights, that being I'm going to use UNESCO bioethics and 1998 human rights. I just want to quickly screen share, but like I say, if you want to say goodbye and exit, you've done 150 odd
Yeah, no,
minutes.
My beautiful wife says, got lunch ready, and I told her we're going to be 2 hours. It's 2.5. So you go for it, brother. I really appreciate it, and hope we can do this again soon.
All right, then. Yeah. Bless you. Thank you. Much love to the Queen, the twin flame, the wife, AKA. And thank you for your time. And hopefully we'll arrange a time for a premiere, put all the links
Absolutely
that you've got to share, and hopefully have you back soon for another continuation or different, segue paradigm that will go on.
Kathy says hi. She watches your work, which is everybody's work. So absolutely. Much appreciated, brother.
Ciao, fratello. Mille grazie.
So much love and respect, and I'll say arrivederci. Arrivederci. Ciao.
Hasta mañana. Ciao, bro. Bit of Spanish. Right then, let's go to the screen share. There I am going here to the resource library. Isn't he a lovely man? Isn't he a brilliant soul? Data Protection Act 1998, 2018, EU GDPR. This is in the SPLS Pro Resource Library or Literature Library and Resource Vault. So I'm looking on page 2 here. I'm quickly prepared. You have the Geneva Bible, Patriot Edition, International and Universal Fundamental Rights, Unilateral Non-Disclosure Agreement that we've got there. I've designed. Sex Discrimination Act, Equality Act, GDPR compliance, Data Protection Acts 98 and 2018, GDPR, General Data Protection Regulations from the EU, Human Rights Act 1998, Reference Guide to Consent for Examination or Treatment. We want to open that one. And informed consent in UNESCO's bioethics documents. I think it's the latter that I'm going to open first. He says famously, open with, yes, please. Should be all on the screen share. It's along, we've covered this before and it's along the right line. So hopefully this works, which it looks like it is. How many pages have we got? 9 pages. That's gone to 1998. It might be the other document, informed consent then, in elements of UNESCO's bioethics. Yep, so it's not this one. All right, back to the library. Reference guide. This was taken from the doctors, initially given to us. Then I located it online, wanted to look at it firsthand for myself, and what was being told to us on a Telegram chat. Department of Health, there we go. So from the state, Reference Guide to Consent for Examination or Treatment, 2nd edition. Let me just do this again. The Human Rights Act 98 came into force in October 2000, giving further effect into the UK to the rights enshrined in the European Convention of Human Rights. All public authorities are required to act in accordance with the rights set out in the Human Rights Act, and all other statutes have to be interpreted by the courts so far as possible in accordance with those rights. The main articles that are likely to be relevant in medical case law are Article 2, Protection of the Right to Life, Article 3, Prohibition of torture and inhumane or degrading treatment or punishment, Article 5, the right to liberty and security, Article 8, the right to respect for private and family life, Article 9, freedom of thought, conscience and religion, Article 12, the right to marry and found a family. It does say found. Article 14, prohibition of discrimination and the enjoyment of convention rights. Compliance with the Human Rights Act is largely reflected in existing good ethical practice, but all health practitioners should be aware of the Human Rights Act and ensure that they act in compliance with it. The British Medical Association, BMA, has a handbook of ethics and law that gives advice on how the Human Rights Act relates to the range of relevant issues, relevant developments, the Human Tissue Act 04. I don't need to read about that. So that's an interesting reference in a document there. Reference, if you are so inclined. We'll look at the Human Rights Act 1998, and then I'm going for my dinner. And I shall say arrivederci and ciao bello. You just get that to download and open. It's as simple as this, to use splspro.com's literature library and resource vault. The Human Rights Act 1998, chapter 42. There is 32 pages on this. An act to give further effect to rights and freedoms guaranteed under the European Convention on Human Rights. So we remember what Claudio has mentioned previously, to make provisions with respect to holders of certain judicial offices who become judges of the European Court of Human Rights and for connected purposes, 9th of November 98. Be it enacted by the Queen's most excellent majesty by and with the advice and consent of the Lord spiritual and temporal. What's that then? That's something to have a look at. The Lord spiritual and temporal. And Commons in this present Parliament assembled and by the authority of the same as follows. So the Convention of Rights. I'll let you screenshot some of this for those that haven't got the luxury of computers downloading, or you're not a supporter and beneficiary of our foundation, educational private trust. Right. Interpretation of Convention of Rights. Interpretation of legislation. Declaration of incompatibility. Right of Crown to intervene. Acts of public authorities. It is unlawful for a public authority to act in a way which is incompatible with the convention right. Proceedings. Judicial remedies. Ooh, say what? Freeze. Judicial acts. 9 of 32, a third of the way through. Power to make remedial action. Safeguard for existing human rights. Freedom of expression. Freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. Derogations. Reservations. Period for which designated derogations have effect. Periodic review of designated reservations. Appointment to European Court of Human Rights, ECHR, aka. It's about a sheriff principal, judge of the court, section 11 of the Sheriff Court Scotland Act, blah, blah, blah. The Lord Chancellor, Secretary of State. Very interesting. It's not the greatest exciting read for some. The Lord Chief Justice is in here. I believe that would be Robert Buckland, and I believe he's just changed office, and the Lord Chief Justice of England. What is he involved to do? I think I was talking with Stephen about that just last night on our private Telegram chat. Orders, etc. under this act. Interpretation in this act. Amend includes repeal and apply. Well, that's your interpretations. There's a lot of that. Short title, commencement, application and extent. This act may be cited as the Human Rights Act 98. Schedules. Article 2, right to life. Article 3, prohibition of torture. Article 4, prohibition of slavery and forced labour. So voluntary slavery, as I've said, and such things like that, voluntary employment, submitting, drawing you back to that comment earlier, then that's not illegal or unlawful. Voluntary equity does not aid a volunteer. Right to liberty and security, Article 5. Well, liberty is given to a sailor when they come to shore. Liberties can be taken away from you. Go to the homepage of splspro.com, listen to the excerpt by George Carling. It has got profound language and it's very explicit, so don't listen to it in front of the procreations. But liberties, sailors, they're not rights, they're not properties. They're not as great as what they appear to be. The Statue of Liberty. Article 6, the right to a fair trial. What? What? Yes, indeed. 7, no punishment without law. 8, right to respect for private and family life. 9, freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. 10, freedom of expression. 11, freedom of assembly and association. 12, right to marry. 14, prohibition of discrimination. 16, restrictions on political activity of aliens. Nothing in Articles 10, 11, and 14 shall be regarded as preventing the high contracting parties from imposing restrictions on the political activity of aliens. Do, 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 do. Article 17, prohibition of abuse of rights. Article 18, limitation on use of restrictions on rights. Part 2, the first protocol. We've got protection of property, Article 1. Article 2, right to education. 3, right to free elections. 3, Article 1 of the 13th protocol, abolition of the death penalty. We're nearly at the end. 27 of 32. You've got the 6th protocol, the abolition of the death penalty in time of war, remedial orders. Definitions. We're at the end now. Just got reminded by something and then I immediately forgot it when I was on aliens. Something else I wanted to quickly mention before we close down, which is important. Conscience and religion, expressions, associations, right to know. What was it? Not just jogged. Had something which is gone, which is important, and then on the replay I'll be like, I've remembered it now, and I'll have to type it in the chat to pay attention to the chat. It may well come back to me. Use of rights. I don't know, it's gone, lost it. I shall end it there then. Say much love. Thank you very much. It's been fun. I hope that you've enjoyed it. It's been entertaining, educational. If you have benefited or found any of this information valuable, please come to visit us or look to help us, support the stream, join the channel, support the channel. The details are in the video description, and we'll be very grateful of that. We'll say much love. Ciao for now. I'm all seized up. And it's been fun. If you'd like to join me on one of these chats and you are a supporter of Indiglo, I have said that I will invite you to have a hangout with me, a podcast with me, and those that are level 2 or above that support this channel can have the chance to come on and chat with me offline like this, and then it will be premiered and you will be able to feature with the camera on, with the camera off, anonymously. Or if you've got something to say, you want to voice your opinion, then I promise you exclusive perks, as it says, if you join and support this channel, Indiglo. We've covered enough for today. Your saturation points more than been passed. So let's stop sharing and say ciao bello. Much love. What? Until the next time.